Good morning, all. If I sound a little huskier than usual, it's because I'm nursing a slight cold. Thank you to the Business Standard leadership. Thank you to all of you for having me over here to speak at this Tech Talk and on a topic that is obviously certainly fashionable to speak about in the current context of the ChatGPT revolution, if you want to call it that, which is AI. Let me start by sharing with you a couple of background markers, if you want to refer to them as that. Just a few weeks ago, I think just 10, 12 days ago, I was in the same hall, and we were in the process of launching the new version, or the new edition of Skill India. And while skilling is, it's a reasonably old topic and people have spoken about it and are aware of it, this latest edition of Skill India was designed by the Honorable Prime Minister and had attached to the conventional verbiage of skilling two specific phrases. One is much more understandable, it said industry ready. And the second, at his insistence, was future ready skills. So therefore the design of skill or the redesign of our skilling programs that has happened over the last 6-8 months is now making us focus on skilling for the future as much as we skill for the present and the now. And as we looked at that, it was certainly clear from the industry, from those who employ our talented young Indians, both in India and abroad, that artificial intelligence skills and skills in those areas adjacent to that are going to be in high demand in the coming years. And therefore, a large part of our skilling around the future-ready skills is around AI. So that is one little marker for us to recognize. The second is something that I like sharing with, and I've visited since I've become minister about 52 campuses of or colleges all around the country. And I have this privilege and occasion to meet with young students all over the country, is that certainly we are at a time in the history of India that is very unusual and certainly very unprecedented. As somebody who spent over 30, 35 years in tech, and that should tell you how old I am or what vintage I am, we were, for a large part, my generation and maybe even generations that succeeded it, except for maybe the current generation, we were mute observers, or rather mute consumers of global trends in technology changes and shifts. So we sort of followed the curve. When wireless broke out in the 90s, we were belatedly in that, we jumped into that. When the internet really started expanding in the late 90s and early 2000s, we kind of jumped into that. When the bubble burst in the early 2000s, the local Indian bubble burst. So we were sort of trailing indicators or trailing, in a sense, we were adopters of technology trends around the world, and we sort of, in most cases, just consumed and went along with the world. And so this second point is a very important point that I want to make to all of you, and because you're all practitioners, you're all in the tech space, is that we are certainly today at a stage, whether we look at changes in the semicon, electronics, microelectronics space, whether we look at the changes in the underlying internet from the current Web 2 to Web 3, whether we look at AI compute and that whole stack, and the changes that are clearly underway and are going to be deep and disruptive in the coming 5 years, 6 years, decade. One certain headline I can tell you is we are now participants in all of those trends. So any graph that you draw, any wave that you draw, any way you can model those disruptions in analog terms or in some digital model, you'll find the presence of India and Indian entrepreneurship and Indian talent and Indian skills and Indian capabilities certainly there. And having made these 2 points, I want to say how we see AI, how the government of India and indeed all of us see AI. So the first way our government's perspective to AI is a quote from our PM way back in 2017-18, and he said, we need to make AI in India, make AI work for India. So while there is a normal conversation about AI, which is about how many research papers and what large language models got built and who built it and which institution has the most PhDs, and which is all very great, which is good and very important. Our government and our Prime Minister from 2015 has always looked at technology as an enabler for transformation, or an enabler for empowerment. And I use this example to explain to well-heeled tech audiences like yours who may not really get that underlying philosophy that the Prime Minister had in 2015, which is to use one sharp example to how technology has really transformed India, and that, in a sense, is the vision for all things technology going forward. For decades, the narrative about India, for decades, including when I was a student and maybe indeed when most of you were students, was we were a great country with great people, with a lot of people, but dysfunctional governance. And to, in a sense, epitomize that dysfunctional governance narrative about India, one example was always trotted out. And that example was this famous Rajiv Gandhi quote in 1986 or 87, I don't recall the exact year, which is that the cost of democracy in Asia, cost of democracy in India was that 100 rupees left Delhi, 15 rupees reached the citizen of India or benefited the citizen of India. That 85 rupees was effectively the cost of democracy. The whole program that has been envisaged by the government is really built on A, what the Prime Minister said, that we must make AI work for India, and B, that AI can be a kinetic enabler of the digital economy. Just like UPI was built to solve a government problem and has created one of the most vibrant fintech ecosystems in the world, we believe AI can solve a governance problem, make governance smarter, make governance and the whole process of scheme planning, delivery of schemes much more intelligent, much more data-led, built on models. At the same time, create an adjacent ecosystem of innovation around AI for which we are building the framework. So that is the thinking. Let me just tell you what we are doing. We have obviously launched the India AI program. The government has announced a considerable amount of money for it. 3 centers of excellence are being established. And the centers of excellence are now going to be standalone silos, but they are going to be hubs in a network of spokes all around the country, where we want essentially the entire academic, industry, research ecosystem to be somehow connected to these centers of excellence as being part of a distant spoke or being very closely located to the hub, but making this really a network effect, networked model of AI for India. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is we are launching the India Datasets program. You all know as AI practitioners that one of the big concerns, and you heard of Elon Musk and others talk about pausing the research in these models and the development of these models, is the fear of bias and the lack of diversity in the underlying data sets that are fueling these models. And one of the big reasons why the India Datasets program is going to be so powerful and people are looking at it with so much of interest, as we represent one of the most diverse collection of data sets, diverse collection of citizens, and therefore from Jammu Kashmir to Kanyakumari to Northeast to the West, the data sets that the government has, and I'm only talking about the government at this stage, when organized and when made available in a reasonably curated form to research and startups, can represent a game changer to what raw material that the AI system has currently. So the India Datasets program is the second big piece of this that is being built. And we are doing all of this, by the way. We had a long consultation under the India AI program. This is not just the minister and 3 bureaucrats sitting and designing this. We have involved every stakeholder, academic, industry, startup, to every stage of our conversation on designing and building the India AI program. And there are 4 different working groups that have been set up that are on one hand designing the India Datasets platform, to the other hand designing the network of around the centers of excellence, and that are basically, these groups they consist not just of government, but government representative, academic institution professors, startups, and big industry, big tech companies. So that is the India Datasets program. Currently, our thinking is that the India Datasets program will be offered access to those data sets, and those to the models that can access those will be essentially Indian. So they are either Indian researchers or Indian startups. Nothing precludes the Indian startups from, of course, collaborating with the IBMs and the Dells and the big Microsofts and the big companies in the world. But certainly we will allow direct access only to Indian startups and the Indian research community, of course. Excuse me. Our goals, what are the priority areas as the government has identified them? This is, of course, independent of and not linked to what the private sector and the startups want to do. Clearly, one of our priorities is the India Stack, which is the governance application, AI applications in government. The second is the language model DI Bhashini. Because for us, the internet is such a valuable and a very important part of this whole new governance, maximum governance model that we are deploying, and that English and Hindi still represent only about 40 to 50%, or sorry, 60% of the total population of India. For inclusion, we need to develop DI Bhashini into something very, very robust, and to allow the inclusion of all of those non-English speakers and non-Hindi speakers into the power of the internet and power of digital governance. So that is the DI Bhashini piece. Healthcare is the third priority for the government of India in terms of our own focus in terms of creating applications in AI. And of course, like I said, governance, the DI Bhashini, healthcare. And then there will be all kinds of other issues, all kinds of other applications that we will encourage and work with the private sector and startups to develop. So I don't want to necessarily suggest that those are the only 2 areas that we are limited to doing. I will not take very much more of your time, excepting to say our vision is certainly that in the next 10 years, the decade that the Honorable Prime Minister has referred to as the India Techade, that we will certainly be one of the leading nations, not as government of India, but as startups and industry and as a collective AI community and academics, be one of the players in the evolving of the artificial intelligence space. We are in 2023 the chairman of the GPAI, the Global Program for Artificial Intelligence, where all nations that deal with AI are represented. And one of the areas that we are very focused on is the other area that is of great concern, which is the guardrails and the risks of AI and the ethical use of AI. And in the new Digital India Act, which will be the replacement for the IT Act, I can share with you that one of the big areas that Act will cover is the area of guardrails and the framework of how emerging technologies, without disrupting innovation, without disrupting that momentum, how the government can create these guardrails for ethical use and prescribing no-go areas for those technologies. So I will leave it at that. Again, thank you, Business Standard, Ashok in particular, for inviting me here today to speak to you, and thank you all for being here patiently to listen to a politician talk about AI. It's not a very easy thing I can assume for all of you, but we are very excited by what the future holds in AI in particular, but also overall in the digital ecosystem and what that represents to the future of many, many thousands and crores of young Indians all around the country. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Many thanks, Mr. Chandrasekhar, for your enlightening, forthright views on technology and especially AI. You so beautifully laid down the architecture that the government is looking at and its wider impact on the economy, society, governance, skilling, healthcare, and like you rightly put it, that the next decade would be India's tech decade. To make AI not just in India, but to make it work for India. May I now invite Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director of Business Standard, to the stage and request him to conduct the question and answer session with the Minister. Please, Mr. Bhattacharya.
Thank you, Sailesh. Thank you, Minister, for making such a succinct speech which brought about a kind of an understanding of the way the government looks at artificial intelligence and technology.
Occupation, job role point of view, you can look at it from a market's point of view. But certainly we can all live under the one fundamental underlying agreement or one belief that the tomorrow's world is not going to be today's world, and the rules that we apply for today's or the assumptions that we use to decide today is not the assumptions that we will use for tomorrow. And if you don't subscribe to that, then you're living in an alternate reality, and perhaps metaverse and a headset or whatever that thing is probably what you should be using. But coming back to a serious note, this disruption is what we should prepare for. We should not necessarily be scared of it. We should not think of this as a challenge, but we should also think of it as an opportunity. And I'll explain to you why. This disruption that I am talking about is a disruption that the entire world is facing. All of the enterprises all around the world, consumers all around the world are all going to necessarily go through the same disruption. But think of us as this haven in a storm that is going to repeatedly unleash itself on the economy, on business models all around the world in the next decade. And look at what we have. We have the ability to be the talent pool for all of these new future-ready job role requirements. We have young Indians today who are prepared to skill, upskill, reskill. So if we just create a framework, so like I said, let's tick one that the change is going to be the normal, and it is going to make a lot of job roles redundant, and is going to create in its wake a lot of new job roles. So there is absolutely, and I have one interesting thing from the Financial Times that lays out the jobs most exposed to AI and the jobs that are going to be replaced by AI. Yeah. There is a whole inventory of those job roles, including, by the way, I find very interesting that judicial law clerks, mathematicians, judges are all jobs that are more exposed to AI. So, I mean, I think many would argue
doesn't
that...
include media? Huh? Doesn't include media?
Interestingly, it doesn't include media. So I think the media is safe. But certainly accountants and auditors, lawyers. So it's pretty interesting to say that some of the occupations that we think are, the lucrative occupations today are going to face challenges. But anyway, that being aside, the only guarantor that we have, and I say this in every college, every university that I go, is to ensure that we are the skills and the temperament to constantly upgrade our skills as these changes happen to position ourselves for these new opportunities. Because as the disruption occurs, it is clear that some job roles will get redundant or will diminish in size, volume, or including being absent totally. But new capabilities and new expectations and new job roles will certainly arise. So even in manufacturing, for example, if you just use that as a basic surrogate for this conversation, you will see that a lot of jobs in the manufacturing space are going to become much more high-ended, Industry 4.0, where vision, computer vision, and those types of skills will be required. So that is why, I mean, I actually, you may think I'm a fanboy of our Honorable Prime Minister, and I certainly am. But way back in 2018, he talked about future-ready skills. And I think in the post-COVID world, it is becoming clear that our skilling ecosystem must really be designed around the future disruption and therefore the future new opportunities and job roles, rather than only skill for what was the past and what is the present. So that, I think, is the way to approach these disruptions. And these disruptions are going to certainly happen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Minister, for making this clarification. The second fear about technology pertains to the class of people that benefit apparently more from technology, which is believed to be the upper crust of society. The large part of rural India may benefit a little bit from technology, the way you mentioned about UPI and everything, but the large chunk of Indian society is benefiting from technology, and those belong to the higher end of the economic spectrum. Is that a challenge? How do you make sure that that technology beneficiary segments actually that spectrum gets wider and wider to include more number of people? Otherwise, it will become a very elitist kind of a world and sector. Your thoughts?
And Ashok, that is exactly the myth that I'm glad you asked that question, because I think when you sit in Bengaluru and your narrative is, and the discourse and the reportage is usually about who's the next startup, who became the unicorn, there is a tendency to believe that technology is really about that conversation, whose net worth went up, who exited, who's unicorn, what was the valuation, etc., etc. But look, I can tell you that that is as far away from the truth as you can get. Technology today in India is of course relevant for the innovators, it is relevant for the industries, yes, of course, because that is part of the digital economy, we are creating jobs, opportunities. But the technology narrative that the Prime Minister unleashed in 2015 was about transforming the lives of people who for many decades had been disconnected from government. And there was this huge trust and distance deficit between government and citizen, exactly like you said. And I will give you examples of this that I have personally encountered. I went to Nagaland. Northeast is my area of political responsibility, so I go there repeatedly. I drove 9.5 hours to a remote district where no minister had visited that district since independence.
Wow.
So 9.5 hours, bag breaking, and so next day morning, early morning, 7:38, the community had gathered, 500 women, elders, all of the community. And so the first question I asked was, how many of you have digital identity Aadhaar? The entire room, hands up. How many of you receive your benefits on your DBT? Entire room. How many of you have connection to the internet? The entire room. So I can assure you today, as satisfying a conversation is about a unicorn in Bengaluru or Hyderabad, it is as much or even more impactful to see the power of technology in transforming the lives of somebody as far away in Zuniboto, Nagaland, and connecting them and making them an equal citizen of India as a citizen in Bengaluru or Devanalli or Chikbalapur, in terms of what they receive from the government, what their expectations are from the government, how they can reach out to the government. So I can tell you that this narrative of technology exclusion or therefore digital inclusion or digital divide, if there is a country in the world that is demonstrating that technology can be used to demolish that barrier that exists between the haves and the have-nots, India is that country. And I have seen this in action, Ashok. And it is increasingly playing out in every district. Now, when I went to UP for the UP elections and the Honorable Prime Minister had given me some responsibility there, I coined a phrase called Digital India ka Digital Uttar Pradesh. Now, I don't know how many of you are from UP, but all the political leaders there told me, nee, UP ka, media wale, UP ka elections are all on caste and OBC and ye hai, wo hai. That phrase caught fire because amongst the youth, The narrative is मुझे नेट का स्पीड ज़्यादा चाहिए, पानी, सड़क, खाना, बिजली, घर वो तो हो गया है, अभी मुझे नेट का स्पीड ज़्यादा चाहिए, वो मुझे 5G का चाहिए, 4G का चाहिए, हमें सिग्नल मिल रहा है 2G का. So I think, look, with 85 crore Indians online and 120 crore Indians coming online by 25, we are already the largest connected democracy in the world and we'll be the largest connected nation in the world. I think the underlying internet and the connectivity is breaking any force that was ensuring that there was any digital exclusion or there was some sort of a divide. It is addressing that, and you will see even one of the test cases is if parties today rely more on social media and digital media for advertising than conventional advertising. Iska matlab kya hai? This is the meaning.
Do you think artificial intelligence will accentuate this trend?
No, I think artificial intelligence, the way we see it, where the power of India's stack, which is what today is bridging the divide, or has bridged the divide, that the India stack will become a lot more intelligent and a lot more customized for the local community. Because of the size of our country and because of the nature of our federal democracy, there is a tendency for scheme design. When you design a PM Awas or you design any scheme, tends to be a one shoe or a two shoe or a five shoe fits all. What AI, we are looking at AI is to make the India stack work for local communities and local villages and going, including to the Gram Panchayat level, be able to tune schemes to be able to suit their demography, their requirements, their particular needs, and whatever deficits that they face, infrastructure, social, or otherwise. That, I think, is the power that we see the AI delivering to the India stack.
But it will be hugely disruptive. And how is the government gearing
hugely,
up?
I would rather use the word, it will be hugely transformational.
Transformative.
Yeah, I don't know. Disruptive in the government conversation may mean something negative.
Okay.
But we want to use AI to take the record of the last 9 years of really bringing governance to the doorstep of citizens and taking it to the next level.
So, is it possible for you to give us an indication of how is the government gearing up for this transformation?
No, look, we have, first of all, if you just go back to the journey of the last 9 years, we started this digitalization process by building these independent platforms. So you had UPI, you had Aadhaar, then you had CoWIN, then you had Skill India, then you had education. And now we have consolidated that and integrated that into the India stack. So you have an identity layer, you have a finance and payment layer, you have a storage layer, and you have multiple applications that sit there as a stack. And people can use, state governments can use it, communities can use it as a stack or as individual pieces. Now we will bring in learning and intelligence into that stack, which will sit off all these big, huge amounts of data that we have about consumer behavior, about citizen behavior, what they are consuming. Even today, for example, one of the problems that the government system has to deal with is, even though the stack has addressed significantly this with UPI as well, which is duplication.
Yeah.
People having fraudulently taking subsidies.
Correct.
And therefore denying a legitimate person subsidy. So AI can use, and without telling you too much, but AI will certainly take that down to almost zero. It has come down from the 2014 levels of having almost 100% fakes. I don't know if you're aware that at one point Karnataka had BPL cards,
ration card holders.
that were 150% of the population of Karnataka. So that was what it was. And now that is whittled down to a much larger, smaller number. So, but even there we believe that with AI, we can start looking at where somebody, for example, requires more help. So today, for example, when you say a scheme, it is almost equal in terms of financial value. So you may be in West Bengal where the standard of living may be different. I may be in Karnataka, standard of living different. We don't do standard of living adjusted subsidies.
Yeah.
So therefore, a lot of other fine-tuning of how we design schemes can be based on AI and the models that can drive that.
Okay. Mr. Minister, you talked about how the government is looking at AI to solve the governance problem, and you hinted at that just now. And my question is that in this entire journey and exercise, the elephant in the room is the civil service. In a sense, the civil servants at various layers. And what we have seen in the past is that, yes, while civil servants do help facilitate this transformation, but they also at times create vested interests, and they often are not necessarily a very facilitating force. Is that something that worries you, bothers you, or do you think, how do you tackle this civil service problem, if it is a problem? What's your take on this?
So, look, I think any leader, and our Prime Minister is certainly a leader who wants to change, transform, build a new India, and therefore, since that is his mission, certainly the status quo of how administration was done for several decades, all that has to change, and he wants to change it. Now, you know it, you've been in this for so long, that anytime you do a change or you want to do a change, whether you're in the media, whether you're in business, whether you're in government, there will always be status quos, and there will always be vested interest saying, why change? Or change ka ye problem hoga, if you do this, that will be the issue. And there is a lot of that paranoia. Some of it just temperamentally people not wanting to risk change. Some of them vested interests that believe that change basically will deprive them of some power or other lucrative benefits that they enjoyed. And some people who just want to be cussed about change.
That's right.
So this is normal. I don't think this is anything particularly unique to government. But you have seen over the last 9 years, I think in a lot of ways the Prime Minister has rewritten what the narrative of Indian administration and Indian governance was and can be. And today, for example, people come to me and say that we are so impressed with how the government functions and how responsive things are. Which is not to say that everything is great and things don't need improvement in some places. And that is something that we just have to be patient.
Yeah.
You see, if you're so focused, and as the Prime Minister is on the outcome, not too much of energy should be spent in complaining about all the problems that you encounter on the way to the outcome.
Yeah.
You have to find a way to solve those problems, either convince people who don't understand it, those who are deliberate roadblocks, move them aside, bring people who are not, who are enablers, those who are vested interests, who see some lucrative benefits in grabbing power, have to be incentivized not to be.
That's
So that is part of, I think, what this country is going through, a change where government and service in the government is seen as service to the people and service to the larger goal of the nation, rather than the old British style model of I am a minister, I am a bureaucrat, and therefore everybody should come and bow and scrape and expect a favor from me. So I think that process has already started in 2014. It's certainly not complete. But
my question actually, Mr. Minister, was that do you see there's a change in the civil service in facilitating this change towards new technologies, AI?
No, I don't want to say 100% yes,
Yeah.
but I will certainly not say 100% no.
Okay.
I think, for example, in my ministry in METI, there is certainly a very committed group of a mix of young and very senior officers who certainly see the light, certainly see the vision that the Prime Minister has laid in front of the country and work. Now, the issue is not so much about their willingness as much as their capability sometimes.
That's right.
So in AI, for example, if you look at this space, AI is certainly an area that even I, for example, find it difficult to understand sometimes. Even though I did 30 years ago, my thesis was an AI thesis. I certainly meet a 28-year-old today and I think he's talking Latin and I'm understanding Urdu. So, so that skill gap and that capability gap will always be there. The way we address that is to say that nothing we do in the government in terms of policy making, scheme making will be done without active participation by the industry. So they are as much a stakeholder in what we design as we are. So that is the best way to address capability gaps. So the intention gaps I don't think exist so much. I think the government in general is completely behind what we want to achieve. But there will certainly be, I mean, if somebody from, let's say, IBM comes and starts talking to me about quantum and, gets
Yeah.
into the next level of detail of quantum, even I would find it difficult to understand. So you can understand how an IAS officer will feel.
Yeah.
So I think the way to do that is to just make sure that we work as a team rather than across a table, sit around the table.
And that process is on.
Oh yeah, everything we do,
Okay.
including policy making, we do only with consultation. Even the IT rules, the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, the India AI program, the semiconductor mission, every element of what we are doing today to build this whole India Decade has significant participation and footprints of the private sector.
Yeah,
and
that's very reassuring.
No, 100%.
Yeah. It is often said that India is not a country, but there are 30 countries in this. And you are also the Union Minister of State for Technology. What is your sense? You traveled to many states. You said you went to UP and many other. You went to Northeast. What is your sense of this level of awareness, commitment to bringing about technology, artificial intelligence in the state governments? Because they're the real executors of these things. I mean, it's not enough for you to decide from New Delhi. So how do you see that is happening, this revolution taking place in the states?
So I can tell you that for a long time, the different states had different interest levels.
That's right.
And it all depended on the CM of that state or the technology minister of the state. But what we have started doing over the last 2 years is to have a twice a year IT ministers meet.
Oh.
Or twice a year IT secretaries meet. One IT secretaries meet just got over just 4 days ago, where our secretary, Alkesh Sharma, calls all the IT secretaries
Of different states.
of all the states. And everybody shows up and they have a long discussion about this is our vision, this is our policy making roadmap, and these are the opportunities as the government of India sees it. And especially making it clear that if we look at, for example, electronics as an opportunity, there is not very much place in my office to build a factory. So the factories will be built in Bangalore, it will be built in Hyderabad, it will be built in Chennai, it will be built in Noida, it will be built elsewhere. So the states have to be active partners. And I can tell you, very interestingly today, there is an almost competitive race going on in all of these areas.
Okay.
Because they are seeing that our policies are being built to create underlying economic activity and opportunity, and therefore a lot of states are now in competition. And I know for one IT minister who recently told me, why are you having all these IT ministers meeting? We are anyway ahead. आप हमारे लिए competition create कर रहे हो.
This must be a North Indian state.
I won't say Hindi. I use Hindi deliberately, but he didn't speak in Hindi for sure. That's good for us because that's good for the country where, for example, to attract an Apple plant, there are 5 states in the running, or to attract a center of excellence for AI. I mean, I would have never thought this 5 years ago that 5 or 6 or 7 IT ministers would call and say the center of excellence for AI should be in my state.
Oh, really?
When we talked about the India Semiconductor Research Center, the IT Minister and the IT Secretary of Karnataka, I had announced it this morning, and the evening I get a letter saying the India Semiconductor Research Center should be in Bengaluru.
Okay.
So there is I think technology is being seen as like I said, improving governance and as well as creating economic opportunities for every state. It is no longer the case that it's only Karnataka, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, and sometimes Gurugram that is in the race today. UP is in it, Maharashtra is in it, Tamil Nadu is in it, Karnataka is in it. So
this is widespread.
Very widespread, and it's becoming increasingly competitive for both talent, investments, and for the whole digital economy spectrum.
Most union ministers have this not often expressed grouse, so to say, on getting the necessary funding from the Union Finance Ministry. On the question of this movement, you talked about how the AI is solving the governance problem. Do you have enough funds? Is there a funding issue? Because you didn't mention anything about funding?
No, no.
Because it does require money.
I have, for example, I'll just tell you, our ministry, I should not say I.
Yeah.
Our ministry has, for example, $10 billion to spend in semiconductors, $20 billion to spend in electronics manufacturing, and we have almost $200 million to spend on AI.
Million.
Million dollars. So rupee equivalent in dollars.
$200 million.
Yeah. So it is, and none of the Prime Minister's vision on this is very clear. We are not going to be financially constrained. It is all going to be our imagination and how much we can execute. So there is no point talking about $1 billion for AI today if there is not a credible roadmap for the first 100 million.
That's right.
So I am very confident today that if to build this world-class AI ecosystem, that is our ambition and our vision and our goal and our mission, that if there is more funding required for the government of India, which I don't think is required, because it is more innovation than really any real hard infrastructure except for the AI compute side, that if there is any requirement, I can go back to the government and the government will fully support. I didn't mention this, but one of the things when AI is spoken about is that we don't have enough AI compute capacity. And I just want to share with all of you that that is certainly on the radar, and we are going to very soon talk about this capacity for AI compute that we are building and how we are doing this in partnership with the private sector.
Okay. My final question to you, Mr. Minister, that you talked about some of the, not problems, but, particularly the kind of fears that Elon Musk talked about. Would you like to tell us a little more about the checks and balances that we in India, and you are the minister, should be mindful of, worry about? After all, India is a diverse country where even fake identities, as you rightly pointed out, in a bank account can create problems of your money going out of your accounts. So your thoughts?
I think they have it right when they worry about where these models can go and where the applications can go. I think because we are all operating in the unknown right now, and we are certainly every day looking at the capabilities that these models are throwing up and saying, oh my God. Mm-hmm. So I think almost every day, if you're an AI practitioner and you read or hear or experience something that is new, you're certainly saying, boy, I never thought that this is possible. Now, I have never thought this is possible could extend to all things good, but it could also start going into all things. I have seen some deep fakes in the last 10, 15 days that will make a head explode in terms of having a particular person saying things in such an authentic manner that it is absolutely, even forensically difficult to figure out whether it's a fake or a real. Mm-hmm. So I'm just using one example to show that conflated with the rise of misinformation on the internet. So there are certainly many harms that can come from an unfettered use of AI. And that is an assumption that we can again make, just as we are making the assumption that disruption is the new normal and there will be more disruption. That AI has the potential to create harm is an assumption that we can safely make today. Now, what are the harms? How do we regulate the harm? Ashok, we are, after 20 years, we are only beginning to wake up to the reality of user harm on the internet in general. Absolutely. And we are all waking up as governments all around the world to how to regulate the internet for issues like doxing and gaslighting. So I think this is an area that we have flagged. I think that whole group of people that have said that, look, AI development is good, but we must also parallelly start talking about how do we make sure there are clearly demarcated no-go areas for AI. And there should be a global consensus for this. Is a good thing for us to do parallelly as AI is beginning to take off. Because if we don't do this, we would be where we are today after 20 years of big tech, which is we are now just scratching our heads, pulling our hair and saying, how do we deal with these big tech guys? Right. And you cannot deal with the big tech guys anymore because they're too big to deal with. So we certainly don't want to be in a situation 3 years from now where you have all these monsters on the net and then we are too late to the party to regulate it. So this is the right time to start talking about it. Our process is sometime towards the end of April, we start the debate and consultation on the Digital India Act. The Digital India Act will be the successor for the IT Act. It'll have a whole section on emerging technologies and new technologies. And we will, in consultation with the industry, consultation with academia, and global best practices, figure out the basic principles on how to ensure that our internet should remain safe and trusted, even with AI being a big player on the
That's
internet.
right. Just one thought, question actually. You talked about consulting industry. Is there an institutional structure that you're looking at in terms of which is an ongoing exercise for
No,
consulting
what
the
we
industry?
do is we do these consultations as in that of course the ministry has advisory groups,
Yeah.
and the advisory groups are every year or every 2 years newer and newer people come into it. But what we do is for every area like this, we do multiple rounds of public consultations
Okay.
where anybody can come in. So if you're a media, if you're a tech journalist, if you're a tech entrepreneur, if you're a tech industry, leader or a participant, you can just register and come in. We've done this for everything that
And
we've
this is
done.
online.
Online, physical. We do this physical. For example, on online gaming recently, we ran from January 2nd, 2023 till about March end. We ran almost 6 different large public consultations,
That's right.
which lasted 3-4 hours per consultation, where I am present myself. So people ask questions, people suggest, and what we started off as a draft policy for online gaming, and what we ended up were dramatically changed
Okay.
because of the process of consultation.
Yeah. My last question on AI, is there something that needs to be done in an international level in the sense that after all this will be affecting developing countries at the same
100%,
time? And what
sure.
is your thought?
No, on the internet, and therefore I am saying AI, there is no way that countries can individually regulate things in a borderless world.
Uh-huh.
And therefore, even when India tries and does something and the rest of the world is beginning to look up to what we are doing in terms of openness, safety and trust and accountability, there has to be a global protocol. So for AI, for example, in GPay, which is the global partnership for AI, where India is now chairing it, the agenda for this year is ethical use of AI.
Ah.
So hopefully by November of this year, there will be a larger global understanding of what ought to be the go, no-go areas for AI, led by India, led by our own experiences, and that countries like Japan, countries like the US will also, especially open democracies and open societies, will basically sign up to some global charter, which can then become individual legislations in each country or individual protocols or rules and guidelines in each country. Unless there is a broader global coalition to deal with the concept of harm on the internet, harm on the internet will always thrive.
Yeah.
And like-minded countries, I said this recently in one of the geopolitical things in Delhi, that unless like-minded countries come together and agree to partner and create a framework for the future of the internet and the future of AI, to believe that one country can do it, India can do it for itself. And we are the largest connected nation in the world, and we still have some logic to do it on ourselves. But if countries partner, then I think there's a better bet that the internet that we see in the coming years will be more safe and trusted, and therefore be in net a more force for good rather than a worry about user harm and toxicity and crime.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. I think this, Q&A session probably could have gone on and on, but unfortunately the Minister has to leave for another meeting. So we have to let him go. And as far as his speech, as well as these observations to my questions concerned, I think the broad message, I know it is very, very difficult to sum up such a rich discussion that we had. The broad message is, yes, artificial intelligence, technology are something that are an inevitability, but there is no need to worry. There are tremendous possibilities, and let us not be Luddites. With these words, we close this session and look forward to a very strong panel we have. and Pranjal will be moderating that. Once again, thank you, Minister, for coming here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that very interesting conversation, AKB sir and Minister Chandrasekhar. Thank you for the very interesting fireside chat, Mr. Minister. I now invite Pranjal Sharma, Consulting Editor, Business Standard, to come on stage and conduct the panel discussion, please.
Ramaswamy, Vice President Technology at IBM Technology Sales at India, South Asia. Mr. Gopichand Katragada, former CTO of Tata Sons and founder of Myelin Foundry. Shashank Mohan Jain, Chief Development Architect at SAP Business Technology. Deepak Pargaonkar, VP Solution Engineering at Salesforce India. And Abhijit Majumdar, CIO TCS. So I think after a very exciting discussion, we learned about how the government and the governance structure is being impacted as Mr. Bhattacharya and Minister Chandrasekhar discussed. I think what's important is that there are several stakeholders as users of technology: government, society, technology creators, enterprises. And I think what we'd like to do in this session is to talk about how technology creators and technology users are looking at artificial intelligence and its various uses. What I'd like all the panelists who are practitioners and leaders in their own field
organization to make our processes more efficient. And within that, you can talk about on marketing, it's a propensity modeling. You know, on sales, it could be the lead indicator. On supply chain, it is really around forecasting engine. On a big billion day, for example, or Black Friday, we do millions of transactions. So how do we do fraud detection there? So those are some great examples of how we are using it within the organization. There are thousands of projects that are running at this point in time. The complexity has only increased in the last couple of months and years as we have been going through this particular generation. We have got a lot of data scientists who actually reside in Bangalore. The second part is really about how we are integrating AI into our products to give a better consumer experience, customer experience. And which is where there are models that have been inbuilt into the products which help cyber resiliency. You know, security is the biggest threat. So the model keeps on learning so that the model can keep cyber threats away from the product, right? That's already in production in a customer environment. Or predictive failures. So before the part fails, AI or machine learning is able to give us insight on some part that's going to fail in a production product in a customer environment. So those are examples of customer experience. And the third, we really believe in the fact that AI needs to get democratized. And it's got to be available to anyone and everyone to create their own models and get the insights from the data that they have. And which is where we are bringing in products. We already have products that can do, for example, you spoke about ChatGPT, which is a large language model. You've got products that can do the same level of instructions, can use the models equally for customers who require lower their different kind of products using various accelerators. So in a nutshell, we are doing a lot using that for ourselves, creating customer experience and creating products that can help democratize AI.
And I like the fact that a business leader is talking about democratization of technology. I think that's a very heartening thought. Deepak, when your organization was created, it created a category of itself. Well, Salesforce came up with the idea of everything being on cloud. But today, of course, there's far more maturity. At your company, how is AI being used in a cutting-edge way?
First of all, again, like Manish said, thanks a lot for having us here. Business Standard, thanks a lot for having us here. It was a great session to hear the minister. And now coming to the part that, yes, of course, everyone knows that, like many organizations, Salesforce also started with a lot of innovation, that everything being in cloud, right? Now, over a period of time, we got so many customers who are relying on Salesforce capability and technology to provide experience to their customers. Now, essentially, what it means is there's a lot of users, there's a lot of data which is already there. And organizations now are looking forward to leverage all of that data in a trusted and a secured manner. Now, obviously, we need to kind of provide them the cutting-edge capabilities and artificial intelligence, even the open AI various models are the capabilities now at Salesforce we are bringing to our customers. Starting with very simple things that use case based. Manish spoke about salespeople. Now obviously, imagine a salesperson gets some boost to his productivity whereby AI tells him that, you know what, go and talk to these people. There might be the people who will buy your solution because a model has worked on that. Maybe a customer service representative getting to know that, okay, this is the right answer that I can provide to my customer, which will give the excellent customer experience, or to the consumer itself. On a commerce site, when I'm doing the shopping, very contextual, not really based on generic, but dynamic, very contextual data surfaces to me. So around these use cases, we're trying to bring in that artificial intelligence. At the end of the day, there are some fundamentals on which the development also is being done. That it has to be trusted. It has to be safe. It has to be empowered, honest. Because we heard from Minister about the biases and various aspects also. At the same time, Salesforce Research, which is working on a lot of AI, they also have a component called as AI for Society. And there are a lot of things which are being done in conjunction with several institutions to work on some of the AI capabilities which likely are to impact the societies also. So working with customers, provide them capability, empower employees, and at the end of the day, work for societies also with some guidelines. That's something that, to begin with, Pranjal, is happening. But thanks for having me here again.
Thank you, Deepak. There's a very fascinating example of using new data sets into decision making. You refer to sales. And there's a very interesting case study, some of you may have heard, that one company which used to sell colas used weather as an input for the various markets across US. And when AI alerted them that certain places and cities are going to get a heat wave, they made sure to stock up more on the colas in that region, in those markets, in advance, to make sure that they were meeting the requirement ahead of what the consumers' want was. And that's one of the ways that you can anticipate where the market is headed. But what is the most exciting thing you're doing with AI?
I mean, before I start, a lot of talks I do and talk to people.
And you're an author as well.
Yeah. So what funnily comes out, they say there's a definition of ChatGPT. It's a pre-ChatGPT era and there's a post-ChatGPT era, which means the change we are seeing is just phenomenal, right? Just to put in simple words. Having said that, what from our perspective, we have been working in AI, particularly me, around 4 to 5 years now. And the change we have seen is tremendous. Now, the use cases wise, there are plenty of use cases, like we have recommendation services running, we have anomaly detection, security, etc. We apply AI in all these areas of work. In particular, with the advent of these GPT models, what we are trying to do is see like how can we mitigate the concerns of privacy. Not all data can be fed to ChatGPT, as a matter of fact. Can we run private large language models within our data centers? So this is one of the focus areas we are looking at, and I think this is the journey which is very exciting for us.
Thank you. Gopi, I want to, your experience is brilliant because you were CTO of the country's perhaps the largest conglomerate, and you saw how technology was brought into different businesses and the diverse sets of business models. But now you're also a startup, right? So give us a sense from your perspective, what is the role that AI is playing in, and if some examples from Mylan Foundry.
Will do. Thanks, Pranjal. All that we do is AI, so I'll give you some examples. And before I start, just like Shashank, I would like to acknowledge that we are in a very disruptive age. As disruptive as when we got the internet early 1990s and there were so many businesses launched, which became the big players which we see today, very, very much in the same era right now. And just like the minister, my thesis was funded by NASA. It was an AI thesis. My PhD was also in AI, along with electromagnetic sensors. So I've seen it evolve, and we are at a place right now where all that work has come to play. And it is bearing fruit, and good fruit, and there will be negative consequences also, which we'll have to deal with. So from a standpoint of how AI is impacting and how we are using it from Mylan, generative AI is what I just spoke about, and I'll come to that later. But areas and specific examples, for example, in media and entertainment, today most of the folks, if they have to display in HD or full HD and ultra HD, they have to also transmit in the same format. However, what can be done and what we do is allow somebody to transmit in SD and on the edge, on the device, scale it up to HD or full HD. So what that does is it actually saves carbon footprint, it actually saves cost, and it enhances the experience. So that's an example of how you take a particular resolution and scale each pixel's quality also. Similarly, if you take in an automotive, which is moving, the ability to react to, let's say, driver behavior or even predict driver wellness, these are all things which today can happen right there in the automotive. While the training is, of course, happening on the cloud, you don't have to go back to the cloud to avoid an accident. Right? And another example will be in healthcare, since the minister also mentioned healthcare. With all these new technologies, the key thing is if you're using AI, for example, to look at ultrasound scan or an X-ray scan or a CT scan, it's good. But what is better is rethink healthcare. So if you can rethink healthcare in terms of simpler equipment which can detect wellness early enough when it goes off normal, then you're doing much better. You can take healthcare into the rural sector. So we are looking at detecting chronic inflammation using a fusion of bioimpedance, heart rate variability, not heart rate itself, but heart rate variability, and a picture of your face, because there's a lot of information on your face. And fusing that to get to chronic inflammation means I can detect chronic diseases much earlier using AI. Now coming last point on generative AI, which is what ChatGPT is. Also you can call it artificial general intelligence, a very early form. But generative AI, there's a lot happening there. For example, we have built a companion which goes with you in the car. And you can chat with it and ask questions about things around you, or if you're a history buff or you're going to the US, you're going to a particular city, ask more about that city, and you'll get informed not only through one generative AI, but you can combine information from multiple, use a Twitter API, and combine information in a manner where you're conversing with probably the most intelligent companion you will ever get. Right? So that's one example of where we are headed. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
There's so many examples packed into that short intervention, Gopi. I think we have much to unpack from that. Abhijit, it's an exciting, to have TCS here and talk about it. And the history of IT sector in India was very different. It was more analog and less digital. But now clearly there's been leaps that companies like yours have taken. So where is TCS in terms of using AI today?
So first of all, thank you for having us here. Thank you. Thank Business Standard for inviting us. I think the history of AI and TCS has been long. We have been speaking about AI since the 90s, and we have been leveraging AI to deliver solutions and services to our customers more than a decade. Right? We have been partnering with various technology companies to do that, as well as our own investment in AI. We have come up with solutions, models to deliver these services. So 3 areas I would say if I want to highlight where TCS is focusing on today. One is to deliver services to our customers. Interesting services that we do for, let's say, an energy company in North America, where we are using AI models to predict the usage of energy in particular locations, not just weather data, but multiple other data as well. And to ensure that the right amount of energy is generated and delivered to that and made available at any given point in time. Similarly, we are using AI in our products. Right? One of the key use of AI has been to build one of our products called TCS Banks. Its code is 100% generated today using one of our own internal generative AI tools. We have been using AI in other products to solve our customer problems. Digitate is a solution we have taken to market about a decade. It's doing fantastic today and having a lot of growth. The third area of AI is in our internal cases, right? As Deepak mentioned, as Manish mentioned, sales is obviously an area everybody uses AI. We are using AI to look at our contracts to see what are our obligations towards our customers, and are we meeting our obligations fruitfully. We are using AI to ensure that people across the organization can query and understand what our policies are, especially HR policies, leave policies, healthcare policies, Mediclaim, payroll. So HR policies and all that, we have created chatbots. In fact, we have chatbot, AI chatbots out there in the market where any candidate who wants to join a company like TCS can query and ask questions. What kind of work, what's a career progression, any questions they may have. We have a Rexa chatbot on our website which answers it. We are using AI solutions in the multiple marathons that we that we sponsor across the world. Mumbai Marathon, New York Marathon, Chicago and all that. A lot of back-end work leverages AI so that we can accurately predict and manage events like this. And also give a sense of how the event is going to anybody who wants to look at what's happening on the field. In fact, the New York Marathon app right now, which is AI enabled, is today the highest trending app in the Webby Awards. Hopefully we win, if you guys can look at it. So these are some of the examples that we are using AI today. The future is definitely very strong, as Gopi mentioned here and others have mentioned. We don't see there is any process that would not be enhanced by AI. We don't see any of our processes. We don't see any of our customer processes we enhanced by AI. And that's where we will go in the future. We will leverage AI as a technology to deliver better services, better solutions to all our stakeholders. That's the intent.
Thank you. I think you mentioned a very interesting sector of sports while you're talking about the app, but I think sports fitness is being advanced by AI, where each champion is analyzing his or her own ability and seeing what AI can predict based on that. So we'll delve into that a little bit later in the conversation. But Vishwanath, IBM of course has been a leader for 1,000 years perhaps in technology. That's what it feels like. So what I'd like to specifically ask you is, in India, what is the kind of innovation that IBM is doing in AI? You look at South Asia as a region, and a lot of us agree that the needs for a society in this part of the world are very different from the enterprises and the markets from other parts, and perhaps the developed societies. What is the work that you are leading for the region in AI?
Hey, thanks, Pranjal, and once again, it's a pleasure to be here and with the esteemed panelists as well. So I'll break this up into two parts, right? One is what we do within IBM. By the way, we're not 1,000, we are just 110 years old company, right? And still...
Feels like forever, right?
Yeah, but it's there forever, right? So one is what we do internally for ourselves, how we are transformed. And AI is not new. While the buzzword is new over the last few years, I would say, but AI has always been existing in some other avatar, right? To the point what Manish made of something like predictive failure alerts on hardware was there quite some time back in hardware as well. But let me first talk about what we do in India for the clients in India, right? So we have a huge IBM research facility where a lot of research on, scientific research on AI with different domains, be it health, be it bioengineering, bioinformatics, financial markets, BFSI, insurance, and all of that happens. And a lot of quantum research also happens, which is what it's more AI driven as well. So that is as far as made in India and made for the world, right? So that's one. Within India, a lot of clients today have embraced AI in different forms and shapes. And I'll give you a few examples. One of the large private sector bank was, and most of the banks, the biggest revenue generator is the trade finance operations. A very large trade finance, the largest private sector bank was, trade finance operations is typically highly manual. There is speed and accuracy, which is very, very important out there. Accuracy is more important. And which is where, instead of having more of manual intervention, we built in a lot of AI algorithm models out there using our Watson as our flagship platform to kind of automate and infuse intelligent automation and AI into almost every process of trade finance. That's one such example. So from what manually it used to be done in a full day is now done in few minutes, right? And the accuracy levels are 95%, 98% plus, because that's more important in AI. Second is you're looking at surveyorless insurance claims, right? So you're in a motor vehicle, you're going in a highway, God forbid you met up with an accident, your vehicle is damaged, you can't wait for the surveyor to come on the highway, right? For you to get that. So you have photographic images through AI models built in to say that, hey, with these photographs, this is the kind of claim which you would get without any survey being there, and the claim would automatically get deposited. And it's happening in India as well with few insurance companies. Internally within IBM, we have kind of, I will give you two examples. One is with the people front, and second is from an infrastructure front. From a people front, we population within IBM, what we started call as a HIRO, H-I-R-O, or what we call as a HR digital worker. And it helped a lot of managers and leaders who were manually collating performance data of their employees for promotion cycles. So, and that used to take hours for every employee per manager, and that's gone down to few minutes using AI tools within our organization using Watson Orchestrate, again built on the Watson platform, IBM Watson platform. Another one, quite similar to what Abhijit mentioned, was we started getting into something called as a conversational AI in IBM, which is called as Ask HR, where if you go back in time, I'm sure all of the organizations out here would go on, right? You just have mobiles and you don't type the 8888 out there anymore. So you go to the Ask HR, it's a conversational AI. You want to know what is the performance, what are the PMR levels, how is he trending from a performance perspective on sales performance, and all of the parameters. It is a very intuitive conversational kind of an AI, which has been there for many years within IBM, and that's been put to use, right? So that is where people is concerned. When you come to infrastructure, we have built in a lot of technologies, IBM technologies for our own data centers across the globe. Today, you can't be dashboarding, physically seeing in front of the screen, okay, which application and which workload is consuming what infra. Intuitively, there's a built-in AI within the tools within IBM, which dynamically moves applications depending upon the infrastructure resources. And now, we are taking this across to many clients across the globe and in India. So these are some of the glimpses of where the use cases are.
So now I'm going to come to some, general questions, and I'd request any of you to address, and please feel free to add to any of the fellow panelists. I think the challenges of adopting technology, and we had this chat earlier, that technology is replacing technology, right? So which means that just when an enterprise gets ready for a certain set of tools, a new set comes in. Different departments have legacy issues because everybody's been using different, and then you want to integrate. But what do you integrate them with? What are the key challenges do you see in India when you reach out to your clients in terms of asking them to use AI? Does the demand come from them, or do you say that why don't you use AI for solving your problem? How does it work? Go ahead. Yeah. You don't have to hit a buzzer. You can just start.
Sorry. Yeah. So I think, as TCS, one of the things that we are seeing is that it always starts with a conversation on what we want to do. Technology, sometimes there are legacy technologies, but more importantly for AI, we need quality data, which may or may not be present in many organizations. However, today we see that all conversations also has an element to look at what is it that we can do leveraging AI, be it in the banking sector. There is a tremendous amount of use of AI that we are seeing, manufacturing, public institutions. In every cases we see usage of AI being at least part of the conversation. We may not end up using it because of, as I said, legacy technology issues, maybe issues with the quality of data. So may not be using it in the first phase, but it's always there as part of the conversation.
So our observation, and I surely build on what Abhijit has said, see, there are types of industries now, and the conversations depend on what kind of industry are we talking to. There are completely some digital organizations, right, for whom experience to be given on the website. When a consumer browses the website, it has to be hyper-personalized, that creating a segment of one. And what is the best way in which you can create that real-time consumer experience? And we are having those conversations with the consumers, not customers, and not only are in the boardroom only, but they're thinking of what kind of data do we use for that? How do we really give that experience to the consumer? So there are some conversations where organizations know that it's a technology-based organization, and we need to provide all those capability to our consumers as well as employees. The other part is where the organizations are one part managing whatever they are best at. If you are in manufacturing, producing whatever is best for your consumers, and then now trying to reach through your large distribution network, create brands. And such organizations are also now thinking, okay, in my marketing, and when we now talk about the chat GPT. One of the use cases now is conceived is creative outputs, the creative creations, right, as to for the marketing function. So people are now thinking about, oh, can I use this? So yes, there are lots of use cases which are being already conceived. As I earlier also mentioned, starting with some simple things. Bot. Bot is also an AI, right? I mean, 24/7, it's providing consumer experience. So it is pivoting around, putting customer at the center of the business. What is the type of experience we want to provide to the consumer? And at the same time, then data, as he said, everyone is asking about, but we need data for that. We need models for that. And how do we leverage that? So let me tell you, very interesting conversations, very interesting.
I think from a challenges perspective, I put it three, and I quote this right. There is no AI without IA, right? There's no AI without information architecture, right? So to the point what Abhijit and Deepak mentioned is, if you do not have your data strategy and execution model in place, your AI is not going to work. Absolutely not going to work. It would be just a fashion jewelry out there, but with no purpose, right? So that's one. Second is the skills and expertise on the AI as well, right? It's just not about writing the algorithms and the large language models out there, but also understanding the domain of what the outcome you want to deliver out of it. That's the second. And the third and most important is a trust on the AI, right? More often than not, many of the clients, they start doubting, oh, is it trusted AI model? Is 80% accuracy okay? Is it the right thing? You start...
Trust goes with accountability.
Accountability, that's right, right? So that becomes another challenge which needs to be overcome for you to build a robust AI model. Only then, when these three levers are in place, information architecture, data, skills, expertise, along with domain knowledge and trust, that kind of would be the perfect AI model.
It's interesting that you say whether there's demand coming from customers or are we going and talking about it. I think it's both. But funnily enough, and I remember this conversation with CIO of an old bank about 3 years back, this is pre-pandemic, where he said that, listen, my board has given me money, but I don't know what to do on AI. So it does get funny at times, and they were asking for our ideas, and we did collaborate there. But coming to the point, and both Vishwanath and...
Sorry, so the board had said, okay, this is $10 million for AI, and figured out what to do with it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't 10 million. It was lesser than that. But yes, and that also is the power of technology, where everyone across the organization, starting at the right of the top, is saying, listen, we want to utilize technology. And then then the funds are available. Going back to what Minister was saying earlier, that funds are possibly not a constraint at this point in time for the right thing to do. Both Abhijit and Vishwanath spoke a lot about data. That's a big challenge. You've got to create, you've got to protect, and you've got to govern. I think the most important piece where AI becomes difficult to, or the biggest challenge, is how to take this into production. You've got to have the innovator, you've got to have the creator, the implementer, and the consumer, all sitting together and thinking on the same lines. The innovator could be the leader, the business leader, implementer is the data scientist, the creator is really your developer, and the user are the user groups who are using and monitoring it. So that singular vision, the confluence of ideas and agreement on how they're going to use is really what makes it a reality.
I think since I work for a dev organization, I will probably put it this way. It's not just about the external customers. We face challenge when we talk to teams internally. They are not willing to share the data because of the privacy concerns, security concerns, how the data will be curated, etc. And sometimes the bigger challenge is even the data gathering and how the specific teams have gathered the data. How do you curate the data? So there are plenty of challenges around data. I think that's the main challenge we face today.
I'll give you a perspective from a large company as well. So Predix was something GE built, AI tool. We put $6 billion when I left. After that, we put another $2 billion B. The difficulties are what my co-panelists have all shared, but I'll give you a specific one. We built something which would take data and process it in the cloud and give reports which were used by the headquarters. And not understanding that it requires to be centered around the factory floor, if that's what you're doing. right? And to do that, you need to close the loop by doing it right there. And so even then, even after that, it doesn't mean that it will flow smoothly. Organizational structures are very different than how we are implementing AI. And so that's one aspect which I wanted to mention. The other, straight to your question on India. In India, as a startup, I can tell you that we started off wanting to do initially 100% of the work for Indian customers. It turned out with that we at least did 80% of our POCs for Indian customers, but 80% of the revenue and contracts we got from customers abroad. Because in India, we found people, large companies even, are wanting to experiment and learn and then drop it, right? So they're in deep tech. So where it is not so straightforward as saying that, okay, here's a tool and you click a button and it's installed. It's not the case definitely with most AI interventions, because like the co-panelist said, there is data, there is cleaning of data, there is required to bring something new, which will give you a lot of benefit. That we found it easier to go, without even going abroad, get customers from abroad.
You know, I'll come to that because that's a very critical point about India's response to technology. But last month I was in Bangalore and met a multi-billion-dollar technology company, and they have gone, they've done an internal transformation of their own system. They were delivering very good solutions to their clients, but their internal systems were such that they, for example, could not track the payments from many of their clients. They have, hundreds and thousands of clients. They have gone into a situation, and all of you referred to data. The question I'm going to pose to you is that to have data-first policy, you have to change the entire process inside an organization. So, for example, an important development today, and I hope there's nobody from Microsoft here, Excel is dying. Nobody is using Excel sheets. What we are using, a lot of companies are using our dashboards. So data is put at the initial stage, and AI and other sets analyze that information. So what most, team leaders at different levels across sectors, this is what I learned, are now focusing on dashboards, and there's graded access to that. So my question to you is, how difficult is it when you talk to your clients to change their internal processes to be able to use AI or any technology efficiently? You cannot use AI if there is no data, and there cannot be data if somebody is sitting and printing out sheets of paper or scribbling notes or putting data into Excel sheets. How difficult is that challenge for Indian enterprises today?
You spoke about the data part and also the organizational processes. And see, today, Pranjal, when we talk about the data, it's really very varied and very different and a huge amount of data. The earlier data, you spoke about the departmental functions. There might be certain transactional data that might be generated. There might be some kind of invoices or order transactions. But today, you talk to marketing function, it's huge data, some coming from the web streams, some from the engagement on the mobile app, some coming from the social channels about either you are a consumer and you would always want to have data about the anonymous world also. So this data is huge. It is coming from all the sources, which is relevant for all the functions
but
also.
My question is, Deepak, are companies in India
changing
their systems to be able to make sure data automatically flows in?
Correct. I'm coming to that. So that is why organizations now are talking to us, or for everyone, with everyone about, and thinking about single source of truth. Because what you said is absolutely right. Someone is working on a truth of data. B is working on a different set of data. And that is creating organizational challenges. So yes, today organizations are asking for creation of that single source of truth. Easier said than done. Because while the technologies are available for you, but at the same time, as you rightly said, you need that organizational philosophy, resolve. And then, of course, the technology would be available for you to consolidate the data, harmonize the data, activate the data. Yes, to answer your question or the observation, organizations are having challenges. They also know that there is data availability and they need to work on getting a single source of truth for them to use it effectively.
I think, sorry.
I think the problem you asked is how do we address these data concerns, right? So when we started out on AI, our systems were based on the model that we take data to the compute, which means there's a centralized system which we use, and there all the AI models are residing, and we do the AI there. Now what is happening as a change is primarily we are moving from that model to more of embedded AI, which means we take compute to the data. So any team which is handling the data, they have their privacy concerns. So you take the models, you build the models, you train them. The guidance is there, the standards, the frameworks are there, and you build the models and deploy and operate on them yourselves. So that's the change I am seeing.
Yeah, so to your question, Pranjal, what are the challenges? How are organizations embracing this, right? And so that is, it depends
Because they have to change their
own culture,
the culture,
fabric,
structure of
and the
their
fabric.
organization,
Yeah.
perhaps the hierarchy, and the way they have identified different teams.
Right. So probably about 5 years back, we never had a chief data officer as a role.
Right.
Okay. Today, you have a chief data officer first in place in almost every institution, at least for large corporates and enterprises, which is a good sign, right? So there is indeed a realization that this is needed. Now, the challenging task is there are twofold, right? To the point that you have to change the process to get the data in place. Goodness is on one end of the spectrum, which is the banking and fintech and insurance industry, which is a very highly regulated industry. The regulations have forced them to change, okay? So, which is a good thing, right? So either you change by yourself or somebody else changes you, right? So that's one end of the spectrum. So that has in turn resulted the change in process, while it was painful, but I think to a very large extent today, most of the financial institutions in India, banks, fintechs, all of them have changed to that effect, right? So which has now become a little frictionless. On the other end of the spectrum, when you look at retail or manufacturing, which is not very highly regulated of sorts as much as you compare with banking, right? There, the survival of the organization itself made them change. That if you don't change, somebody else is going to eat your lunch. And that somebody else who's going to eat your lunch is the organization who is data ready, who is AI driven, and they are going to eat the lunch. So the competitive forces have forced the organizations to change, right? Legacy organizations change. So today you say, if you look at many of the retail organizations, and thanks to COVID, they got themselves changed much faster than probably what they were in a brick and mortar space, right? So either the regulators would change or the competitive forces would change. The pain would be there, right? The pain is there, but the goodness is at least there is a realization within the fabric of the organization that yes, it's inevitable.
So one of the areas that we face a challenge is who is the buyer? And when there is a new form of technology, is it the factory floor, is it the domain owner, is it the corporate CIO? So that problem still exists. Definitely we have that problem in India, but it will resolve. As AI shows its value more and more, it will resolve. But I also think that there is a need for technology to meet the organization also. What I mean by that is some of the newer advantages of technologies like generative AI is that they use models, for example, transformer networks. And transformer networks, I'll give you an example. You take defect detection. Traditionally, if you use AI, you need tons of data of every kind of defect, and it's very difficult to get. And it is just difficult to get because defects don't occur in a good factory, and you want to have hundreds representing one dent type or one crack type or one porosity type. It's not going to be easy. So transformer models, they work on a pristine sample and look for anomalies using this technique which has been popularized from 2017. It's been worked on from before, where you don't need so much data. Actually, you don't need, only you need pristine sample data, right? So it's looking for anomalies. So there is a technology meeting the organization, but yeah, there is still some amount of organization meeting and receiving, the ability to receive technology.
Manish, we began by talking about democratizing technology. But with due respect to all of you, you're all large companies. I'm also including you, Gopi, because you come with a legacy of large companies. But there is also a reality in India that technology is not percolating, to the second level, tier 2, tier 3 companies. SMEs is often an example where they come to a large company like yours and you would say, well, our software is meant for a company which has at least 1,000 people or has sales of a certain level. How do you bring technology and AI to the grassroots of enterprise in India? Because all these issues are terrific for large companies, training people, CXOs, but entrepreneurs who are perhaps in light engineering, who are doing retail, how do you bring technology to them? What can be done by leaders like yours to bring it to them?
If I can start off, is this working? Yeah. So actually, the democratization which my colleague talked about has happened. The reason for that, and we do not need to do anything. In fact, we cannot get in the way also. I'll give you examples. Something like GitHub, right? It takes huge developments and makes it available to any person who can code. And the ability to run very good models, large models, without even having access to a corporate, server bank, right? Because you can, hire some small portion of an AWS server, and if you're a startup especially, you'll get credits, and they will hook you, of course, but there is so much more today which smaller companies can do, individuals can do, because this is not a slogan, it has happened.
Because when you go to a company and say that, I'm a 20 crore company, let's talk about cloud computing. They will say, well, I barely have computing, forget about it.
Making efforts to reach out, to even create the SKUs which are relevant for those organizations, which are like plug and play.
I'll come to, and please have your thoughts and questions ready. Go ahead, Manish.
And I'm just taking a step back here. A lot of the organizations that you're talking about don't have a CIO, right? So
it's really just a founder.
It's just
or
a founder,
family.
Right? It might not be a tech company. So a lot of the things that we just spoke are possibly for those tech companies. I think what is really critical to take and democratize it at the grassroots level requires building an ecosystem. None of us are in this world alone. And by the way technology is graduating, there's no way that any of us can bring the entire solution to anybody alone. So very, very critical, and which is what we are doing, which is to bring partners across the board. If you've got in Jodhpur or Jabalpur a 10 crore organization and they don't have a CIO, the partner, the ecosystem partner acts as a CIO. They are the ones who understand the problem, and they are the ones who we are skilling very often and creating, for example, what Shashank said, ticket sizes to the solution rather than saying, listen, here's the product. And that has to be the distinct difference between what you're taking to
But
market.
is that, let's say, the sub 50 crore annual revenue, sub 20 crore annual revenue companies, are they a market for all of you?
Yeah, so within IBM, what we have done is, see, first and foremost, AI is not a product, right? An AI model is different for the same outcome. You can't productize an AI, right? Just like you would productize an ERP, because an AI which could be beneficial for an organization A may not be relevant, even though they might be in the same industry, may or may not, because the data sets are different and everything is different. So in IBM, what we have done is, it's the consumption of the technology in the form of AI. So we have what we call as a client engineering unit within our business, who actually take a business problem, solve it using a model for that client. It could be a 10 crore organization, it could be a 1,000 crore organization. Second, we are working with a lot of ecosystem partners where we are white labeling our IBM Watson libraries and NLPs to partners. You build on that and take it to the masses, right? So what we call as embedded AI. So building that platform or that ecosystem around gives that scale so that every organization who really want to benefit out of that AI or that technology will be benefited, right? So those are the initiatives which IBM as an organization is taking.
Well, that's very heartening to know. Go ahead, Abhijit.
No, so I think, all the key words have been said, right? So, Manish spoke about the ecosystem, Deepak spoke about the cloud, Gopi spoke about the technologies being available And again, Vishwanath again spoke about the ecosystem. I think the keywords are all there. The thing that we are seeing is that there is a hunger and a hunger within these smaller organizations to leverage technology. And we are also seeing that very quickly we can build these small ecosystems and deliver to a specific niche industry, right? Because the industries, players' needs are more or less equal. And you can use maybe a Google Workspace along with some SaaS products and some, cloud-enabled models and put it together to deliver it to those. So that is the approach that many of us are taking to provide solutions to these small guys. Is it scaling up? There are hubs where it is scaling up. There are specific industries where it is scaling up. But there is also a gap in the market. And
So where is it scaling up and where is it not?
so it is scaling up in, for example, the providers to e-commerce, industries, right? I mean, anybody who's a vendor to Amazon or a Flipkart definitely needs to work with that ecosystem. So they, in effect, have a need to interact.
Because their
with it.
business model is based on that.
That business model is based. You may be a manufacturer, you may be a retailer, but you are, selling it through those platforms. So that's one of the examples. Banks, for example, they will
But
always.
where is it not working? Where should there be more
Manufacturing,
focus?
there are different manufacturing hubs where it is probably, there is an opportunity for us, as I can see. There may be others. I am not as expert in all of those.
Fair point, fair point. So some thoughts and questions from all of you in the hall? Yes, I think I can see a hand there, and there's a gentleman there, and yes, great. I'll come to each of you. Can we have, yes, please introduce yourself as well. Thank you. And try to not ask a question which has already been addressed. Sorry, sir, the gentleman behind you has a mic. I'll come to all of you. We have a lot of time. I can't hear you. I think the mic's not working. Can we fix that, please?
Mic?
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah. Now can you hear? Yeah.
Yes, please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, very good afternoon to Ban. Just I wanted to ask the question, is there any AI model in using startups which can predict this goes to next unicorn or anything?
That's a good question. I'm sure something like that can be created, right?
Yeah.
If there is not a model already.
I think if you have the data, you can.
See, AI is there, but don't forget there is other branches of knowledge. One of the things is known is that past is not a prediction of the future of a market. What you can do is, look at the health of the company, have a score for the health of the company, and first of all, unicorn is, how should I put it? It is not a real animal, right? So similarly, the desire to be a unicorn and things, we need to temper it a little bit. I'm a startup still saying that. But the health of the company and future challenges, some of those things we can definitely look at technology prediction. But how somebody becomes $1 billion is influenced by so many things which are actually not predictable.
There's a gentleman at the back over there. Mic to him. Yes. And then we'll come to, please go ahead.
Good morning all. So this is Vallabh from FiTech basically. So as I'm from a manufacturing background, so just morning as Mr. Minister said, so there is still the compute power for AI is on the ramp up basically. On the other side, how much the edge computing has been already in use, or the people are open to getting it used basically?
Okay, edge computing.
So let me take this. I can give you a bird's eye view from a Dell standpoint, but edge computing at this point in time is ramping up. It's not there. Again, edge is also a very a differently used word. It could be near edge, it could be far edge, and depending on whether you're talking about near or far, the adoption would vary. Far edge at this point in time, I would say, is less adopted as compared to near edge. The technologies that are utilizing far edge and utilizing it properly are available, but the deployment, in my view, right now is we are still at the pilot plus stage. There's some adoption, but not entirely. Telecom is doing it beautifully. Manufacturing with Industry 4.0 is already in the process. So depending on the industry that you're talking about, you would see various stages of maturity.
Thank you.
Pranjal, can I add
yeah,
to that?
Sure, please.
Yeah, so we are an edge AI company, so I can tell you that it is an up and coming area. I would totally agree with Manish. And also agree that edge is defined variously. So for us, edge is where data is generated and consumed. So the phone is an edge for us. For most people, that is not a viable place to do AI, but we do AI there. So that is very adventurous and we are doing that, but it is up and coming. But really, when we say that we do not have enough compute infrastructure, I have not seen that problem because we have access to all the compute that we need and we are working on very heavy problems. So this compute infrastructure is not, limited for those who are willing to pay. Maybe it is a question of free compute infrastructure. That might be the point that the minister was addressing. But to all of you, I'll say that there is no shortage of compute infrastructure.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Hi. Good afternoon to one and all present here. My name is Sarthak. I'm Chief Executive Officer at Codeberg. And my question is, like, I'm leading a company which is basically into implementation of vision and conversational AI. Now, when I started this company 1.5 years back, we had a lot of requirements, and especially I would like to name one of my clients, that is Mahindra Research Valley. Slowly and gradually, what I see is that AI is no more like good to have thing, rather it is a necessity. So all the enterprises are coming with their own AI team. So they are not, it is not very likely that they outsource the work to us. And in this case, I am facing a challenge on the customer acquisition strategy. How to place your product in the market, how to show them that, okay, we are doing something different. Most of the senior people whom I have in my company, they said that, Sarthak, you choose one vertical and go deep into it. Like you choose manufacturing, keep building solutions for manufacturing. Rather what we are doing, we are industry agnostic. Because our main, or I would say my main hand is into model optimization for hardware board. How to use all the 4 cores of the hardware and serve the model at a good latency. Thank you.
So that's a deep question.
Yeah, so probably I'll take that up. So visual inspection in AI in visual inspection is a hot subject right now. I can tell you, Sarthak. In fact, IBM, just to answer the previous question as well, on the edge piece of it, edge on cloud with visual inspection, we are already doing with a telecom operator in an Indian manufacturing outfit extensively. It's not like you can't spread too thin in this space, right? You have to have a business problem. Say, for example, the problem which we are trying to solve with edge on cloud, with the telecom operator and the manufacturing concern is using AI visual inspection tools of IBM is to see the quality of the products in the assembly line of the plant on the shop floor. Instead of having a random sampling and doing an inspection and quality of it, we kind of use AI tools for the worker on the cloud, on the edge of, at the shop floor to say whether this product is, can pass a quality test or not, whether there are cracks. So you have to take one business problem. It could be either an automobile assembly line or an auto ancillary assembly line, or it could be a packaging of a retail consumer product, a packaging industry, but it has to be one particular business problem which is solved, right? And for doing that, you need to understand the problem of that industry first, or that shop floor worker. What are you trying to solve? Rather than looking at probably, am I using all the 4 cores or 16 cores of compute which I'm having, right? That's the, I would say that is essential, but that's not something you would go and strive for.
So if I can add, you are working in visual inspection, is that what you said?
Yeah, like we are into vision and conversational AI both. There was one more question. Basically, what should be my customer acquisition strategy? Like how to...
You asked that also. Yeah. So we'll just, I'll give you, since we are also in that area, I'll just share some thoughts. It's, and the question you asked is, since the large companies are building their own AI teams, So how do I present myself, right? So I think it is very important to differentiate yourself, ideally patent technology, think about what is the 10x advantage that you're giving, which has not already been thought about. As an example, when you're looking at steel line, a cold rolled steel line, moving at 1 to 2 meters per second, and you have to do, let's say, 20 frames per second, and each frame is 20 MB in size, very few people can do it on the edge, right? And even you will not be able to do the entire 8 MB on the edge. So how do you find the region of interest? How do you, then go and use a neural network? Until then, you do not use any AI, right? It's all signal processing. How do you combine these things in a manner that gives you a unique problem, solution to a problem, which you have a significant advantage, right? Then you can go, there's a lot. Can the large company also do that? Probably, but it takes some time, and hopefully you have patented some element of that, and so that you show the differentiation. So as a small company, we have significantly more responsibility to provide innovation.
So, your customer acquisition strategy cannot be answered by the panel. It'll require a few days of brainstorming with a lot of experts, and though I'm sure all of them would be happy to help you. I think a gentleman here, yes, you have the mic, and then after that I'll come to you. Sure, and then the lady over there, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Dr. Anish Vekal. I have a company called Trackle Technologies, which is in Bangalore. My primary question is that if you look at AI, it's basically two parts. One, you have data, which is what you all talked about. And the second part is about the technology, in a sense the technique or the multiple process that you follow to use the data that you have to give a solution which you want. Okay? So considering that the amount of data that is acquired is quite limited, is there a thought process that make all data free? And not, basically what I'm trying to ask is not that. Basically what I'm trying to ask is, in which direction do you think the industry should be moving? In one way, you protect the data within the company that has acquired and basically rules saying that I have more data, so I give better results. Or do you want to go to a direction where you make the data free to everybody of every company and basically play with better technology, better technique to provide solutions?
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anish, if you have limited set of data, AI is not the way to go, right? You've got to remember the fuel for artificial intelligence is really data. And then come algos, and then come the compute power. So to begin with, first and foremost, remember you can't train models unless you have the right level of data. So that's where the journey starts. In fact, a lot of what all of us spoke when we were talking about challenges was the fact that we've got humongous amount of data, and within that data, you need to figure out what's the right data set. It's got to be the right data set at the right time, at the right place. So that's how one needs to really think about before you start embarking on this.
I think I'd like to add to this because we face challenges of data where data is in very limited proportion. So we use, I think Gopi mentioned a lot about generative AI. So what we are doing here is that we use the techniques of generative AI to generate synthetic data, which is similar in nature to the distribution of data we have, but little different. So we can make our models more robust using that kind of techniques.
Let me tell you my observation, okay? And all of us are observing that. See, there is so much that is happening as even conversation, regulation around data. Because you spoke about 3 points. One, making data available, omnipresent. Now, organizations and everyone is actually thinking about first-party data because there is a lot of discussion that is happening on third-party data. So you need to have your own data. Then people are thinking about data monetization. That actually is becoming an extremely important area, right? So data, so it is evolving, but at the end of the day, in this evolving scenario, I think we should work on how to gather and how to leverage the data.
So there are a few agencies whose job is to make large databases which are available, right? So many of them are government agencies. For example, when COVID was there, the lung X-ray information, the significant database was coming from Canada. Similarly, several health databases exist around the world. So those are there. Also, large companies whose problem is to solve for, let's say, finding a defect. since we talked about it, they're happy to share their databases and do a competition. Saying, and Kaggle, you would have heard, Kaggle databases cover pretty much any kind of database. So if you want a database, you can go find a database in Kaggle, because there are so many competitions on every possible area which is out there. Right? So that is one way to think about your data question. Companies where data is the competitive edge, they are not going to be willing to share that data. If I spent, let's say, $10 million doing a clinical trial on individuals on how to do some wearable-based wellness measurement, that is my competitive edge, and I will not be willing to share that data. My investors will not allow me to share. But from the algo side also, there is sparse data algorithms, and like we discussed, there is transformer algorithms. All of these will converge. I don't think data is a problem as much as a problem it was some 5 years ago. Today, you can get 5 million faces of data, and not only that, you can get the trained neural network on those 5 million faces readily, right? So what more can I ask for?
Thank you.
Yeah, I have 7 sub-level, strategic level, and specific level questions. I will cover.
You have several?
No, 7.
7?
7 sub-level, strategic level, specific level question. I will compress it into 2 minutes. Yes, correct.
Rest you can engage with them
correct.
Offline,
One-to-one.
because there are more people who want
Offline.
to, right? Thank you.
Yeah.
So, but do introduce yourself. You look
Yeah.
like a very intense research scholar.
Yeah, yes, yeah. More than postdoctoral level, academic and theoretical level.
Okay. So one question, please. Thank you.
Yes. Myself is Sangu from Tamil Nadu. I am a upcoming pilot industrialist in fundraising level. Okay. So first question is the strategic level question. AI, ML, IIoT application versus USP in terms of business and manufacturing perspective alignment.
Thank you. So, again, these are very big questions.
Yes.
I don't think your
very large scale question.
Your research can get some good tips from the panel, but we'll have to come back to you later. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gobi, anybody, would you like to take this?
So you're saying using
Yes.
AI
Yeah.
or ML in
Yeah.
IoT,
Yeah.
what is the USP?
AI, ML and data science and data statistics. What is the USP in terms of business manufacturing perspective alignment in a manufacturing exam, specific to that energy and chemical manufacturing sector?
Yeah, since you are an up and coming business, this is
Yeah.
what I would.
Upcoming pilot industrialist.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're setting up a pilot chemical plant.
Yeah, apex level oxygen manufacturing exam. What is consumed in the oxygen is a substandard.
Yeah. So the USP at the end of the day for something IoT in your kind of industry is to ensure the highest quality at the output for the lowest dollar input. Right? Right from raw material size, if you're using pellets, the pellet size, the variations, to the temperatures and the pressures at each stage, all of these are very important to you. Right? And these are all sensorized, and the output and variations in the output are measured, and the feedback from that will go and optimize your process to give you the best possible output and with the least labor. Now that is the problem in a country like India, because that takes away the labor from that shop floor. It might create labor elsewhere. And also the least amount of dollar input, because your first time yield is going to be high, your raw material rejection is going to be low, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, optimization the efficiency of the pre-manufacturing post-manufacturing era, not only in that, and logistics supply chain aspect.
Thank you very much. You raised some very good questions. What I suggest is connect with them, and maybe you can engage on email later. The lady over there, please.
Good afternoon, dignitaries. This question is for you, Abhijit and Gopichand. In fact, I am also a proud ex-TCS employee, in fact.
So you're only asking TCS questions to TCS?
No, in fact, this is a question for all the dignitaries. Why I said explicitly TCS is, I know that the Tata Group had been working with the government of India very closely for 3 or more decades, in fact. And I would like to understand, because being in the business transformation space, I run a company called Enscons, based out of Marathali in Bangalore, for the business transformation, for people and process transformation. And to the MSMEs, it's actually a big thing. And they are not able to, in fact, they are not ready yet to really absorb the thing, which can actually evolve each of these companies. Many of the companies, though they have existed for 12, 13, or maybe 30 years, probably have grown 5 crores or, to 10 crores of business. And I think we need to change this, ecosystem in a bigger thing. And after working in IT industry, in fact, for 21 years, I have started this company about 5.5 years back. So my question to you is, for the cluster development programs with the Make in India initiatives and the Digital India initiatives which the government has launched, a couple of years back, how is, in fact, Tata companies or even the other SAP or Salesforce or, the Dell or IBM for that matter, is contributing to the cluster development programs? We can see how India can be transformed to the next level.
Abhijit and Gopi.
Yeah, I can go as an ex-Tata Sons person, so that would be my perspective. But you're right, there is a great desire to ensure that the regions that we work in, as the Tata Group, we are contributing to its maximum benefit. Right? So some of the activities that I have been involved and led, as an example, with Tata Communications and CII, we started a digital transformation COE at the national level. And to your particular area of interest, which is MSMEs and measuring their digital readiness and what are the next steps and how to take them there, is something that Center of Excellence is doing and doing quite well even after I have left the group. The other areas of engagement include, we have set up a COE for manufacturing at IIT Kharagpur, and that includes digital aspects, and COE for materials development at IIT Madras, which again includes digital aspects. Just giving you a flavor for some of the things that we are doing.
While your question was specific to specific people, but I would like to take a step. See, Minister also mentioned a couple of things about Skill India program. And we at Salesforce are really proud that we're working with government on that Skill India program. Because we know that, see, all this digital and everything, it will not be really very effective unless we have people who are capable and are enabled with these digital capabilities. So we are working with various government institutions, Skill India program, as well as AICT, as well as a lot of institutions. And also, of course, many of you know that there is a program called Trailhead that Salesforce has, which is free to use for everyone to improve their digital skills. So I think that is one important area, and I'm sure that all of the organizations who are operating in the country are working on some of these aspects, but happy to share that, yes, there is an engagement at that level also.
I just wanted to add one more thing to what Gopi said. Of course, a majority of the work that we do for MSMEs are either through Government of India or through Tata Sons. But we are also working with, along with Tata Sons, on an initiative called Nexarc, which is working to engage and enable the MSMEs in the country in specific clusters. I don't have all the specific details with me right now, but the details are available on our website and you can probably look it up.
Thank you. Anybody who, yes sir. There was anybody else? Because I'd like to wrap up early so that there's chance for all of us to mingle and speak to the panelists later.
Hello, good afternoon to all. I'm Hari from Gadgeo and Smart Systems. I have a question on this embedded AI because we were talking. So what is your view on embedded AI and what are the possibilities of having these models available on smaller footprint devices where you will have it available on any of the smaller devices which could be put on your regular appliances or smaller utensils, smaller tools and those things where the common people start getting the real advantage of this technology. Thank you.
Okay. Can I answer? So if you see the ChatGPT model, right, so it is around 175 billion parameters, which translates to around, let's say, 700 gigabytes of memory, which is not feasible even for a big company to run. So what they are doing is, there are two ways to train the model. One is that you train based on parameters. One, you train it based on the data, which is the tokens. So if you scale on the tokens, you can make a smaller size model, equal quality, almost equal quality, what GPT-3 is, and that's what Facebook Meta has done. So they released the model, I think you might be knowing, called Llama, right, which is only in size of 65 billion. When I say only in size of 65 billion, it is even big. So what people are doing is applying quantization techniques on top of that, which means if you have, let's say, 32-bit floating point size, you reduce it to 4-bit, which means you get almost 1/8 of the size of the model, which you can then download on a smaller device, let's say a Raspberry Pi or a smaller device to run these models. So there are multiple techniques being applied to quantize these models and make them available on smaller, low power, low capacity devices to be run.
Thank you. One last question. I thought there's a gentleman there.
Yeah, good
Yes,
afternoon.
Thank you.
Myself, Sujoy. I represent ESDS Software Solutions Private Limited. So we are a cloud computing company. We have our own patent, India patent, as well as US and UK patent. Now, my honest question to you all, see, adoption of AI and cloud computing does not come cheap. It's very costly. It's very costly. We have been talking to multiple CIOs and the CTOs who are very proactive in going for this adoption. But when it goes to the finance table, a lot of questions comes down to the CIO and the CTOs that what is justification. So stitching this adoption versus finance investment is very, very important right now. If that is not stitched, I think a large will be always large, a startup will be always remain a startup. So my question is, how well we can stitch this adoption versus investment?
Thank you.
Obviously, Make in India flavor is bringing down this gap to some extent, but still I feel it will take another 1 year for this entire adoption. But we don't have time for that because the world is growing very fast and we need to keep up with the pace.
So I'm a small company, but I've also been part of the large companies. Today, if there is a company which is not using cloud, I would be surprised. In the sense, pretty much everybody is on the cloud. Much of what we used to do on our own laptops is no longer on laptops. It's all being run on the cloud. So one thing is, it's not maybe the cloud versus not having a cloud. Maybe it is one cloud versus another, or maybe it's a cloud solution, a new cloud solution. But you're right, cloud is expensive. But at the end of the day, if you include all the individual licenses people would have taken, or individual storage they would have used, or individual compute they would have used, there is an advantage, and that's why we've all switched. As a startup, we are all on the cloud. So it is not expensive that I will not use cloud. I'm a startup, a small company. From day zero, we have been using cloud. I think all companies are there. So that is not there. So if somebody is giving that as an objection, it's a technical objection being given for an objection which is something else. At least that's my view.
So just, while I really don't know exact context in which you are asking, but what we have seen is organizations pay for value. When essentially say, yeah, there is a cost that one has to incur, and there could be a question and discussion about what is expensive, what is not expensive. But when we look at from a value lens, we're taking a very simple example. Today an organization is working on, say, 20 opportunities, 50 opportunities, 100 opportunities with whatever current investment and current technology. Now, whatever new technology you get, if you are able to do 200, 300, now that's a value. That's the outcome. And in that perspective then, the investments start looking, I won't say small, but they start relatable. That yes, we can invest into this initiative. And adoption, one fundamental thing that all of you know, and we also have observed, is what's in it for the user. I mean, is there the benefit that the user is getting, outcome that the user is getting? And most of the organizations that we work with, we also try to address along with them this question. Value statement and what's in it for an individual, group, function, organization. That may be a framework that can be considered and applied.
Thank you. We are coming to an end to the discussion. Sorry, sir, we have to stop now. One quick question. Everybody referred to generative AI. Now, my question is, what are the opportunities you see in India for AGI? A quick answer from any or all of you.
And quantifying, only one thing that I can say, huge opportunity. From a perspective of organizations, they can leverage a lot of capabilities, but yes, you need to consider what's the end use, and then of course the other parameters of how safe it is going to be, how trusted it is going to be, and how transparent it is going to be. So yeah, that will be my perspective.
From a volume of job standpoint, there is an opportunity. I don't know if it was heard, from a volume of job standpoint, there is an opportunity. I know that one of the companies I mentor, which is a social enterprise, is looking to work with OpenAI on creating culturally, contextually sensitive data. See, the data, for example, I can produce today photographs, paintings, etc., using Midjourney, which are so real. It's just amazing. But that is fed from real paintings and real photographs, and providing, so if you want that kind of data to have true Indian faces, go and continue to do that. There's a lot of data generation, data annotation. That is one example of volume jobs. Then there is the high-end algorithm-based opportunities also. But I wanted to share that, millions of jobs.
I think we need another tech talk only on that subject.
So when you said AGI, you meant generative or you meant general AI?
Well, that's a good question. You should tell us both.
Yeah, so I'll answer on the generative part. So
Right.
generative AI takes us to a paradigm where even a person who is not, let's say, a CS graduate can be a good programmer. Right? It opens up a plethora of opportunities for all of us to build applications just by using conversations with the system. Right? Earlier, what used to be the case that you should be properly trained, you should have right skills. Now that barrier probably will wane off as more and more generative AI models come to the fore.
Maybe in vernacular also.
Yes. And to answer the general AGI, when you say AGI in the general context, I don't think, though he said it is there, but I will say it is arriving. It's not yet there.
Thank you. Do you want to add?
Yeah.
Listen, I think we are all excited with the huge potential, but at this point in time, are there very clear monetization opportunities that enterprises have? I would say at this point there's still a question mark. And that is what will evolve, I guess, over the next 6 months and beyond.
Or a few minutes. We don't know.
I think, I will agree that the opportunity is huge. The biggest opportunity is the opportunity that we don't know of. Think about it like this, if we compare where AI is right now with where internet was 25 years back, right, or cloud was 10 years back, each one of them, 4G is a good example actually, each one of them have sprouted new business models that would not have existed with the absence of that technology. I mean, these ride-hailing apps like Uber and all that would not have been there without 4G and cloud together. So generative AI that way has a huge opportunity, but if you ask us to pinpoint and say where exactly that opportunity is, we don't know, and that's the fun of it. That's the unexplored part. I mean, we are exploring things that we don't know, and that's what excites all of us.
It's good to know what we don't know.
Yeah, so generative, just to complement to everyone what they said, right? So it is nascent right now, it is growing. I would say, I would relate it as an analogy like it'll start off as a video game, what we used to play when we were kids, right? And evolve over a serious game in enterprises, right? So it'll start off a little bit consumerish and go to real serious enterprise. But opportunities are galore.
To end by asking all of you a poll of sorts, a simple yes or no. The question is, can we allow AI to take all decisions? Those who think that we can allow AI to take all decisions, raise your hands. I'm being populist here. Okay, so those who think AI should not be allowed to take decisions? I skipped the word. Sorry, sir? Subject to checks and balances. Thank you very much. And with that, I think that's a great summary. Thank you very much for joining us for this really exciting discussion. Please join me in applauding the panel.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the panelists. I now invite Sachin Fanshikar, CEO, Business Standard, to please give a vote of thanks.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So on behalf of Business Standard, I thank Mr. Manish Gupta, Mr. Shashank Mohan Jain, Mr. Gopichan Katragadda, Mr. Abhijit Mazumdar, Mr. Deepak Pargaonkar, and Mr. Vishwanath Ramaswamy for an insightful discussion on the technology and the rise of AI. All the panelists here are definitely the change agents of tomorrow, and they're at the forefront of the transformation we will all go through because of the rise of AI. I hereby thank Embassy REIT, Embassy RIT, for co-sponsorship, and their support was definitely helped us to organize this event. I now invite the panelists and audience to join us for lunch. Thank you.
To be environmentally conscious, socially responsible, and governance-first business is a journey that we at Embassy REIT embarked upon years ago. We have adopted industry-leading ESG framework to help guide us towards our 2040 net zero carbon emissions goal. Our ESG strategy is built on 19 specific programs, each with committed capital and clear targets and action plans. Each day, we continue to be driven by our core purpose of creating and operating world-class, wellness-oriented business workspaces for our tenants, thereby helping create a greener and sustainable tomorrow for the communities at large.
Harnessing the power of clean energy, Embassy REIT is committed to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2040 across its operational portfolio. 3 decades ahead of India's 2017 net zero target. In line with this, the company has launched a 75-25 renewable program aiming to achieve 75% renewable energy usage by 2025. An existing 100 megawatt solar plant, as well as one of Asia's largest solar rooftop projects to install 20 megawatt solar panels, are central to achieving this. Recognized as the world's largest USGBC LEED Platinum office portfolio, Embassy REIT has pioneered several initiatives to reduce energy and water consumption, as well as to promote waste recycling in its properties in partnership with its occupiers.
ANZ's purpose is to shape a world where people and communities thrive in India. In particular, their focus on renewable energy adoption is highly commendable.
Embassy REIT's ESG program has been recognized by multiple global ESG institutions such as GRESB through its highest 5-star rating, and the REIT's development portfolio has been ranked number 1 in the Asia's office sector. Embassy REIT has also brought in the green impetus to its balance sheet by raising an impressive green loan book.
At Embassy REIT, ESG isn't just a buzzword, it's in the ethos of how we run our business. Whether we are pioneering an environmental framework for commercial office in India,
creating a foundation for future generations of skilled workers, or adhering to the best-in-class corporate governance practices and disclosures that facilitated our listing as India's first REIT, we are constantly pushing ourselves to live by the ESG guidelines we espouse.
Underpinned by its philosophy, together we can do more. Embassy REIT is championing a collective action for increased social impact, other corporates, NGOs, and the government.
At Embassy, our Corporate Connect program aligns our CSR mandates with those of our occupiers in areas of education, environment, skill development, and health. Our responsibility as a group goes beyond our business. We have been nurturing communities around our office parks for over 6 years in a very holistic and sustainable manner.
Resilient planet, revitalized communities, and responsible business. And a vision of net zero by 2040. That's the commitment and unwavering mission of Embassy REIT.
People today are far more environmentally conscious. And as a corporate, it's our duty to not only meet their expectations, but to exceed them. For us at Embassy, working towards building a sustainable environment is integral to the way we operate and what we stand for. We are very pleased with what we've achieved so far, but it's a journey that just begun, and together with all our stakeholders, we aim to continue to grow sustainably.